Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our fourth season, we're looking at Kenneth Branagh's 2011 film, Thor. I'm Matthew Fox from theethicalpanda.com.
And I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And today we're talking about minute 64, which begins with Loki telling Thor that he mustn't blame himself and ends with Thor saying no to Loki's goodbye. Joining us on the show today, we have the hosts of Season 2 and Season 3 of Marvel Movie Minute, Kyle Olson and Rob Kubasko. Kyle, Rob, happy Thor's Day! Every Thor's Day, known among the peasants as Thursday, but we know it is truly Thor's Day, we ask people, what is your favorite moment from Thor? So I'm going to ask you both. And normally our guests are totally surprised by this question, but since you, I'm sure, are dutiful listeners to this season and have heard it many weeks, you have had an answer prepped in preparation. What is your favorite Thor moment? It can be from the movies, from the comic books, from a cereal box or a Lego Avengers, whatever it is. What's your favorite Thor moment for this Thor's Day?
Okay, I'm laughing. You're seeing me laughing. Here's why. I'm going to pick a scene from this movie, and I don't mean this in any way poorly, but it's the end credits, and here's why. Patrick Doyle's orchestration over the end credits is one of the most exhilarating fanfares ever. And it pains me because it does not appear, at least on the score that I have. And I still cannot find it. I do not understand why it's not out, but that whole ending is absolutely incredible.
There's a missing piece of music from Ant-Man and the Wasp too, so I'm with you on that.
Yes.
For mine. Okay, so if you listen to the commentary for Young Frankenstein,
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Mel Brooks says every time he watches it, something new occurs to him. So at the time he recorded the commentary, it was Cloris Leachman. So he goes the whole thing talking about how fantastic Cloris Leachman is. And so in that spirit, the thing that occurs to me when you asked me the question, I was like, okay, I have to be honest and think. And the moment that occurs to me is not the one you would think. It's a Odin performance. There's one moment in this movie that I absolutely adore where, you'll probably know because you've watched it and studied more recently, where Anthony Hopkins just turns and goes, ah! He just flat out just turns and growls at someone. Yes. And it just gives me so much joy every time I see it because he's just so in the moment at that point. Like no words, no dialogue, just right out just a feral roar. I love it.
I think that's on Jotunheim when Loki tries to jump into the conversation or after when Odin is scolding Thor.
I think that's right.
Yeah, they're back in the observatory when he does that. Yeah,
that's it. And Loki is kind of perfectly ironic given that that's the moment where Loki is quote unquote defending Thor, which is a theme that we'll discuss just after this promo.
We'd love to see you in some of the Marvel Movie Minute inspired clothing, or maybe with a Marvel Movie Minute inspired mug, something like that over from our merch store. If you go to truestory.fm/Marvel Movie Minute and click on merch, it'll take you right there and you can see all the stuff that we're selling. Again, truestory.fm/Marvel Movie Minute. All right, so we're coming in on this, first of all, since we were just talking about the music, Patrick Doyle's music, the cue here is called Loki's Lie that we're going to hear. And I can't help but feel that it defines so much of what is happening in this particular bit here. Because Loki's Lie, it's like Loki's big lie. It's quite an intimate minute of monologuing with this lie that we have going on here. And it's good stuff. I got to say, Loki is, he came up with a big, juicy one. And you have to imagine that, I don't know. I hope that Loki has his own little group of minions that he can go and pal around with afterward and actually tell. Because otherwise, it's all of this stuff that of his joy, the machinations that he does. I want to know that there's somebody that he just sits around and has drinks with later and kind of tells, and then I did this, and then I told him that Mom hates him too.
Well, I kind of love the idea, but actually I think part of the point of Loki's character is that he doesn't have that. That the closest he has is Thor. And well,
it's just
ethics guy. I got to make it serious.
That's right. Okay,
or I can check my emails. Your choice.
All right. Well, this is kind of an interesting. Really, as a monologue, Thor has very few lines in this bit. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. I have it in two parts: what Loki says and what Loki means. So let's kind of go through all of the stuff Loki says, and then we'll talk about what is Loki really saying here. I think some of it's fairly obvious, but we'll see.
I just have to say, I love that this way of approaching it, and all I can think about is the Key and Peele sketch of Obama's anger interpretator. Here we're doing, Loki's manipulation interpretator. So let's begin.
Exactly. All right. So Loki is finishing up what he said last time with the banishment and the war were too much for father to bear. Thoughts on that? What's Loki mean by all of this?
You broke your father's heart. I mean, like, he really is putting the blame for everything that happened right at Thor's feet. Like, saying, like, yeah, it's because of you that he died, really.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and it's the opposite of your whole goal, or you knew that you needed to earn his respect.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, you broke him.
Yeah.
I mean, completely the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, with your wonderful editing, I'm just assuming that you took all the insightful comments I made about this moment during our last minute when I was wrong and put it in here. But if not, I'll just sum up quickly by saying I think to me, Loki, yes, it's all of that. He's being very intentional. He's being very manipulative. But like any good lie, there's some truth mixed in it. Like, Loki does think Odin, broke into a coma, not death, but in part because of what Thor did. And part of that is his genuine anger at Thor. Part of that is absolving himself of guilt, because it was Loki who also put a whole lot of burdens on Odin that made him, go into the coma. So I think for this and for a lot of things that were going to have happened here, Loki's taking a core of truth, both that he feels and that he knows Thor feels. Like, Thor has to be feeling guilty in this moment. Thor has to be worried. I disappointed Dad. I disappointed Mom. And Loki's just doing this, like, evil but beautiful example of just he knows exactly where the knife is and exactly how to twist it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, especially, I mean, he's already come in with father's dead. I mean, he really just like, here's the knife, I'm going to stick it in. Now I'm just going to keep twisting it around. And that's where we are right now. So the next thing that he says is, you mustn't blame yourself. Thoughts on that line?
Yeah, blame yourself.
Right. This is why I'm telling you this, so that you do blame yourself.
Right.
Yes.
This is what Loki is so good, especially in this movie, where he'll say a thing just to put it in someone's head of like, well, the worst thing we could do is go running off to Jotunheim and fight them. Oh no, we shouldn't do that. He's so good at putting something out there as like, oh, this is a terrible thing, or you shouldn't think that, just as a way of completely manipulating people into thinking exactly the way he wants them to.
Yeah, this is Brer Rabbit saying, please don't throw me into that briar patch.
Exactly.
And Brer Rabbit is
Trickster 101.
Yeah, is a story laced with incredible amounts of racism. So not an indulgence of that. But but still, the point stands. And to me, it's both showing how good a manipulator Loki is. It's also showing that on some level, Thor is dumb as a box of rocks. Like, he's such a puppy dog in this moment. He's just, all he can feel is the guilt and emotion. And I think a lot of people would be like, dude, you are so hardcore trying to manipulate me. This is not going to work. But he knows Thor is just that naive in a way. Like, he's just, if he feels a strong emotion, nothing else is in his head.
He's just a golden retriever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Loki just keeps pretending to throw the ball.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I definitely want to bring that up later, because I think that there's something to that idea of the history that at least we know from subsequent films between Loki and Thor, even Thor's reaction to Loki and all of his trickery, and kind of where that fits in with this when we have this moment here. So I definitely want to circle back to that, because I think there's an interesting conversation there. So the next thing Loki says is, I know that you loved him. I tried to tell him so, but he wouldn't listen.
I fought for you, man. I was up there like...
Well, and it's the whole idea that I know you loved him, and obviously explicitly says it, but the I know means that he didn't. Like, your father thought you were just a screw up, right? Like, he never felt that you respected him or loved him in any way. I mean, it's just, geez, okay.
And it's the same energy as when Odin yelled at Thor because Thor wanted to just go and invade Jotunheim. Remember Loki was so sympathetic to Thor and like, I understand. And that's how he manipulated him into invading in the first place. So because Loki knows like he is Thor's only source of information. So he can make sure Thor knows he cannot come back, but put all the blame on other people.
Yeah. And there's this interesting sense that it's like even up to the end, Odin rejected your love and hence you. Like he won't listen to the fact that when I say that you loved him, he just won't even listen to that.
Right. And that gets right into the next line about the cruelty of the hammer.
Yeah, because the next line is so cruel. And what's great also is the way that Loki's and Tom Hiddleston's voice like changes from sentence to sentence throughout this. Like he really does a great job taking each sentence, looking at what he's doing with it and finding different ways to perform each one because it's so different. But it all fits so well. So the next thing he says...
This is where the Shakespeare comes in. This is where you get a great Shakespearean actor and a great Shakespearean director, and you know that the two of them just sat and worked and worked and worked to find the different variations of the line. They're doing their to be or not to be's, like to try and figure out what's the most painful way we could say this, but still have it be like, oh, so sorry for you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he says, so cruel to put the hammer within your reach, knowing that you could never lift it.
God, what a knife twist that is. Oh, mwah.
Yeah.
Pure just trickster Loki.
Especially because it's once more 3/4 truth, 1/4 lie. Because we were all discussing, or not, but Andy, you and I were discussing way back when that happened that it was pretty cruel for Odin to do this.
Yeah.
The only words of that sentence that are false are knowing that you could never lift it. Because because it's just, again, drawing through this point of, actually Thor could lift at one point. We know that later in the movie. Apologies, spoilers. But Loki's he's just taking the truth that we all know and just adding that teeny little twist.
I mean, you talked about this in the past also, Matthew, how Odin also had been a trickster, right? How there was this element, I mean, not necessarily in the films, but certainly in kind of Norse mythology, like that there was this element to Odin that was this character. And I think now we know kind of Odin has a much darker past in all this in the films.
Oh, yes.
That it's interesting because you hear something like that and it does end up coming across like Odin or like Loki saying, man, Odin came up with the best joke ever. I wish I had thought of that.
Yeah.
It's such a dig, and it's interesting to kind of like see how that comes across. So then he says, the burden of the throne has fallen to me now.
Oh, I love that line so much. It's just like, the thing I've always wanted is now mine. What are you going to do?
The burden.
The burden,
right.
Exactly.
The burden.
The burden.
Burden of the throne.
Yeah. And I hear some of that, like he wants it, but I also see another great knife twist here because now not only is he saying, Thor, you killed our father, you made our mother super angry, and look what you look how badly you hurt me as well.
Right.
You put this burden on my shoulders.
I have to do this?
Which, by the way, you did because you weren't good enough to do it. Like, it's just so brilliant.
And also, I feel like that he's also saying here, I don't intend to give it up either. Like, the burden, it's fallen to me now. Like, this is a burden I have to carry now, and I will carry it.
You.
Yeah, and I will continue to carry it. And you'll always have to remember, I'm carrying this because of you, and I'm not going to give it up. And I feel like there's an interesting element there that he's doing. Then this is where Thor comes in. And I think this is interesting because he finally pipes up and he asks if he can come home. And I think it's because now he knows that Loki is the king. Odin is the one who had banished him, and so theoretically the king is the only one who could break that banishment. And so I think that that's an interesting moment here where we have Thor finally perk up. Oh, so can I come home? And then, of course, Loki says, the truce with Jotunheim is conditional upon your exile. Thoughts on that line? And Thor's line.
It's like, you want to do what's best for all of us, right? I mean, you got to think of the big picture, man. Like, it's not just about you. You have to keep the peace by staying here.
I mean, I see the point about, okay, so if Odin is gone and that's the reason for the exile, but it's pretty pathetic of Thor, right? Like, all of this, and you go, can I come home? Can I come home?
Just come home.
I don't know. My bed. Like, I mean, dude, he's just he's right in the palm of his hand. I mean, it's just, I think the purpose of that line is to really show that he's completely defeated.
Yeah, really.
Matthew, what's the name of Thor's dog? Thorer?
Rover. I don't know.
Okay.
Rover. He misses the dog.
He wants his
He also has
dog.
goats.
Yeah.
He's got his goats.
Tooth biter
There
and
you go.
tooth gnasher.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And also, I think that there's this sense when he says the truce with Jotunheim is conditional upon your exile. I mean, Jotunheim, he pretty much started war with earlier in the film. And so there is this thing where he's saying, you really, really screwed up. And the burden of the throne is that I'm barely holding things together now. And I have to keep you away. I can't bring you back. It's to prevent war. And it's such an interesting way to kind of like pass the buck, right? He's not taking any blame for this. I honestly can't. I'm the king, but I can't do it because you started this war and I have to hold it back. And then this is where he says, and mother has forbidden your return.
Does he say mother or does he say your mother? It's they change the angle right at that thing, so it's hard to see.
It's and mother. With the subtitles on, it's and mother has forbidden
And
your
mother.
return.
Okay. I knew he said something before mother. I couldn't tell if it was our mother, your mother. They're very different depending on what the word is, but and mother is interesting too.
Yeah, and to me, this is just the absolute coup de grace.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we've been discussing that Frigga, his mother, is the one person on Asgard who is clear will never, call Thor out. She is so indulgent of him. She'll giggle and roll her eyes. She'll defend him to their father. And so, he's gone so far that even she isn't going to argue with him anymore. He's truly lost everything. And you just know Loki has been simmering with resentment because of the fact that, Mom likes to love him more because she lets him get away with all this. And so it's just, I feel like this is both, super manipulative and super, evil of Loki. But also, if Loki was seeing a therapist, the therapist would be like, this was a very good cathartic moment for you. Because Loki's able to, all of the resentment he's been feeling for however many hundreds of years of their childhood, he's able to get out and then also just put a little bit of a Loki twist on it, But because I feel like all of these things are things Loki has genuine resentment against Thor for, and he's now using that and just going 3 extra steps.
Well, and it's interesting because also, let's not forget that in this span of time that Thor has been here, Loki has learned that he's the Jotun prince, basically, right? And that his parents that raised him aren't his parents. And so it's interesting where it's almost like he's now taking Frigga for himself, saying, she's not my mom, but I'm going to lie to you and say that she doesn't want you. And I feel like that's even meaner when he kind of does it that way.
I think it's why he would never say your mother, because he doesn't want to. Thor doesn't know any of that, and he doesn't want Thor to know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's really malicious of him, and interestingly, this comes after we read that page in that book that Eric had found of the myths, and it's like the way that it described Loki. I'm like, this is Loki. This is him, right to a T. They really do this. And then Loki says, "This is goodbye, brother. I'm so sorry." And that's pretty much it. It's like, I think he's saying, see ya, you're stuck here, buddy. And he is out. He's like, peace out, I'm gone. And of course, Thor, we have a last moment with Thor where he just says no, which will continue in the next minute. But really, I guess my big question for all of you now, and Matthew, you already kind of brought this up, but knowing what we know, Loki has always been a trickster. He's always been up to no good. And is there anything that's happened in any of this that should be signaling to Thor that Loki is just up to his old tricks? Are we really meant to believe that his tricks are generally smaller, they're less political, and this is just of such magnitude that other than, as we know now, the Warriors 3 and Sif have figured it all out, but Thor, that he just doesn't sense anything at all?
I have a theory, but I'll let someone else jump in first.
I think this is Thor's blind spot. He always thinks that, he'll lie to other people, but Loki would lie to me. I'm Thor. Of course he would. I think that's the one thing where and also because he's so good at it, when he'll say something, it's not always a flat out lie. It's always just a little bent.
Right.
So when he comes back in any confrontation they've had in the past, to be like, no, it's not exactly what I said. I said it would be bad if this happened. Not that it did. That it had.
Right.
I think that's always the way, and it's always like, oh, you lovable scamp. I think it's just that thing that Thor can't assume the worst of Loki, and that is the one thing that ended up would be his, in this case, is his downfall.
I think there's a lot of that. The other thing that I've been playing with, and honestly I had not thought of this at all until Andy, you said what you did about like hoping that Loki has people to say this to.
No, sure, yeah.
I think the only person who will ever get to really know what Loki did is Thor. And Loki knows that in this moment, Thor is just going to be that golden Labrador, that golden retriever. I'm not a dog person. I mix up breeds. The golden Chihuahua Dane who
Big
just can only feel the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But, think of that like old trope of the person who says, I don't just want to beat you. I want you to know that I beat you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Loki knows that Thor may well put the pieces together later after it's too late for him to do anything, and it'll just make Loki so happy because he'll probably still be watching. Let's be honest. Like Loki's obsessed with this. He's not going to stop watching.
Hey, Heimdall, what's he doing now? Is he crying again?
And I just think I think he is dropping just enough hints that he thinks Thor will figure it out one day, and he wants that. He wants Thor to know that he did beat him.
Juicy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, moments like this in this film, I feel like as I watch this film minute by minute, my estimation of it rises because there's so many juicy things. And talking to our Shakespearean experts and stuff, I'm like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in this film. And Loki is such an interesting character. And this minute, I think, just defines that so well. So, all right, well, we're going to finish this conversation tomorrow, but Kyle, Rob, any last thoughts about this minute before we head out?
Clark Gregg looks so good. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, that's just been running around my head for the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, but he can be something else to interview, but I'm just telling you. We won't talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
We love you, man.
Speaking of twisting the knife and reminding me who you got to go on a car ride with you, but I've not gotten into the car with me.
Well, there was no car ride. Who knows? Who knows what will happen? Who knows?
You never know. There's something magical about the Marvel Movie Minute, as all the listeners know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got that email out to Hemsworth's people. I'm sure he'll get to it. Maybe one of the Hemsworths, at least, if not Chris.
Liam's
right.
Liam's totally.
Maybe you'll get the heart surgeon.
All right. Well, we're not going to keep insulting people and driving more and more of them off our list. So I'll just say thank you guys both so much for being a part of this. And as always, thank you so much for driving the bus. And to all of our listeners, you're what makes this possible. Thank you, and have a good day.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is One Last Ride by Martin Puringer. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.